Welcome to the speaker series on A Shotglass of Recovery.
Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of you.
I am Lisa, the host of A Shotglass of Recovery, and this is our speaker series. Let's sit back and get ready for some more experience, strength, and hope.
Hi, thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm an alcoholic named Stacy Cook. It's a privilege to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm really super honored to be here with y'all. And I don't know if my friend Lisa is here, that don't see her, that had asked me to talk. We had met at another group, and we keep getting each other to to talk at different meetings. So it really is an honor to be here. And there's a couple of things that I learned real early on in recovery, and one is that you never have to be alone ever again unless you talk too long. So never talk too long. So I promise y'all, I'll be done. We won't go over, and we'll be out of here right on time. I promise. So Prime Time is my home group, and we actually meet right after this meeting at 8 o'clock. And it's also it's called Primetime Toronto, oddly enough. And I always forget I sound like this, but y'all can probably guess that I'm not from Toronto talking like this, right? So I was sponsoring a girl from Toronto, and we started this meeting, and so we named it. Well, I wanted it to be Toronto for her, right? So it would make it seem like it was her meeting. But anyway, I am actually driving through. I sponsor another girl in Toronto now, and I'm driving through and coming to, she had 10 years Sunday. She has 10 years Sunday, and I'm coming through next week to come to her home group and be able to give her chip. And that's special. And it's my first time ever coming to Toronto, and it'll be my first time. And I've known her for 5 years, and it'll be my first time ever meeting her in person. So it's, this whole new virtual world is pretty amazing, right? So my job is to tell you a little bit of what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. And I will tell you, if you're new, I'm just an alcoholic. I am no authority. This is simply my experience. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's not gospel. It's just my experience. And I encourage you, if my story doesn't resonate with yours, I encourage you to come back and continue to come back. And I promise you, you will eventually hear your story. And it really did take me a long time to hear my story and to like really, really hear my story. But when I did, it was like magic. It was absolutely magical for someone else to be able to put into words things that I've been thinking all my life, but I couldn't seem to put into words. And for someone to just mirror my exact life, it's a moment I'll never forget, the first time that happened. And this identification is so important for us, right? It is so important that we can identify, because the thing is that, like the person that's looking for a sponsor, also, Alejandra, there's as many different kinds of alcoholics as there is alcohol, right? Different sponsors. There's lots of different kinds of sponsors, right? So I hope you find the one that's right for you. And I always tell everyone that I work with, I always say from the very beginning, at any time, I believe personally, y'all, I believe we all have like a dog whistle. We have our own dog whistle. Some people can hear my dog whistle and some people can't, right? You just have to find the right dog whistle. You have to wait till you hear it. And when you hear it, you'll know right away. And sometimes that relationship lasts for a long time, and sometimes it doesn't. I used to be so envious and jealous of people that had the same sponsor, for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because that's not my experience. My experience is I've had many sponsors, and I have had to be open and learn to see when I feel like God's calling me somewhere else, in a different direction, to a different person. And now I've had my current sponsor for a lot of years, but she's very open to, like, I'll read literature with and study and stuff with other women that I would almost look at kind of like as a sponsor, as a guide, as a mentor, right? And luckily, my sponsor is really open to for us to get help wherever we can get help, wherever we need it, wherever we feel like God's calling us. So, but anyway, I always like to talk a little bit about my childhood, because it absolutely has shaped me and my life. And my childhood doesn't make me alcoholic, but it absolutely has. I have a conditioned mind, and it's made me look at the world the way I do, and look at people the way I do, and the way I interact with people, and things like this. And it's really interwoven with my alcoholism. Particularly, I like to call untreated alcoholism, the unmanageable thought life. I'll talk a bit about. So I was raised in a home where I did not have any love in my home. There was no hugs and kisses, no I love yous. It was not a warm, fuzzy place to be. And, to kind of put it in perspective, I always say, like, my parents, they've been married for like 60 something years. And I've never seen my parents hug and kiss, ever, in my entire life, you know? And I mean, when I tell you our feelings were shut down, we were shut down. We didn't talk about anything, nothing at all. Everything was, you say nothing, you see nothing, you hear nothing, it was nothing. So the problem with this is that I never knew how to deal with my feelings. I didn't know how to process feelings. I didn't know, and I desperately wanted their approval. As a matter of fact, I even have an unnatural need and desire for approval. I've learned that about myself. And by the time I was really, really young, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7, I started stealing food. That was the first thing that I started stealing, was food. And my mother, she never would give me enough food. And I because she didn't want me to gain weight. And if I didn't have pictures to look back at myself, I mean, I was thin. I was really thin my whole life growing up. I was, you know, through I was always thin, but I would never been able to believe that. And I didn't really know, if you take some, I mean, food is that's a basic necessity for survival, right? And when you mess with someone's survival, can really kind of mess their thinking up. And so this is, years later into sobriety, I'm learning how to even recognize some of these things, and deal with a lot of this. So, but anyway, so that was the first thing. And then when I was like 9, 10, 11, I'm starting to steal out of a store, a little town store. And I'm from North Carolina. And I'm stealing out of the store, and by the time I was 12 years old, I sold my first car. And I just like to say, I think I was just born with larceny, larceny in my blood. It was just from the very beginning. I was always full of larceny. And then I know there's somebody in this room that can relate to that. There's always somebody that's full of larceny too. But I never knew that that was a sign of deprivation of a child. And like I said, none of this stuff makes me alcoholic, but it absolutely shapes my perception. So the thing is, that's kind of a double whammy for me, is that I was adopted into this family. So it was, abandonment and rejection on steroids. And that's why, it doesn't matter what anybody told me. I mean, they would say the right things many times. Like, I remember my mother telling me that I was a special chosen child because I was adopted, right? Now, she didn't have the ability to hug me and kiss me on the cheek and tell me she loves me, and she still doesn't today. But she was able to say, "You're a special chosen child." And I'll tell you, there is nothing that felt special or chosen about me. And I had this toxic shame from my earliest memories, shame and guilt, and did not like myself. I did not want to be me. I didn't want to be alive. I certainly didn't want to be in around in this house where no, I wasn't noticed, I wasn't heard, I wasn't seen, or that's how it felt, right? So by the time I was 12 years old, I found King alcohol, and I'll tell you what, I the first time I drank, I absolutely positively knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was going to do this again, for sure. I felt the effects produced by alcohol that very first time. And I knew that I was going to drink as often as I could, as long as I could, until there was absolutely no more to drink, until I passed out. My resources were completely gone. And that's what I did until the day I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to say I was a social drinker for like 6 seconds. Literally, that was it. It was over. And I'm like drinking for intoxication, complete oblivion every single time I drank. Now, I'm also confident my age had a lot to do with that, right? I was a kid, I was a teenager. And so, and it's difficult to be honest, y'all. It's difficult to see like adolescent behavior looks a lot like alcoholism, right? And it's very difficult to sometimes differentiate of what of what this is. So this is what I've learned. This is what I've learned that makes me alcoholic. One, there's two things. One is that when I start to drink, I have little control over the amount that I'm going to drink. The second thing is that once I get stopped, I can't stop. I can't help but to start again. Those are the two things that make me alcoholic. And that's it. It's not how much I drank, how long I drank, how long I didn't drink, none what I drank. It's none of that. It's my inability to control my drinking. And I can't seem to stay stopped when I am stopped. I cannot drink safely. That's what I've learned about me. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe I go and everything is fine. Or maybe I plan to do something and come home in 2 hours and I end up in Rome, Italy. Like I have no idea what's going to happen when I drink. This is why I am not someone that can drink safely. And I used that for a long time, because that idea that I can't drink safely, because I could wrap my head around that. I could see that. I had evidence of that. But the fact that I was powerless over beverage alcohol, that was real hard for me. It was so hard for me to really. Now, I got the second part of step one, that my life was unmanageable. That was very clear to me. And by the time I got here, I was homeless. I had compromised every moral and value I ever had for a drink. I had burned every bridge. I had no relationships. I've been arrested. I've been in institutions. There's no question my life was unmanageable. But can y'all believe all of that stuff? All of that. And I could not see that I was powerless over beverage alcohol. So it takes what it takes, right? So anyway, by the time I'm 14 years old, I could have used this program. I really could. That's how much of a wreck I was. And it seemed like I had, there's a part in the doctor's opinion that I really love that explains things really well. It talks about restless, irritable, and discontent, right? When I drink, it it takes care of this restless, irritable, and discontent. But it got shorter and shorter and shorter, the intervals, right? The time period. And the consequences got greater and greater and greater. Eventually, I like to say I abused alcohol so much that I just I could no longer that treating that restless, irritable, and discontentness. It didn't work. And for me, what happens to me is I end up suicidal, is what happens to me. And I I absolutely have an incredible amount of self-hatred and don't want to be on this planet at all. And that's what happens to me. So I'm gonna move along. And when I ended up in an institution in Louisiana, and I was, at that time, I was 19 years old. I was there for almost a year. And when, you know, a lot of people, their lives, it appeared that their lives were just getting started. Maybe they're going to college, or they're getting married, or they're getting wonderful jobs. It was like my life was over. That's how it felt. Like my life was over. And it didn't seem fair. It did not seem fair at all. And my first sponsor, she was a French speaking person in Louisiana. Well, they're called coonasses. It sounds like a terrible word, right? But they're called coonasses. And when I would tell her it just wasn't fair, and she'd say, Misha, the fair comes once a year, yeah, and you missed it. So she'd always say, fair comes once a year and you missed it. So anyway, I end up, when I got out of that institution, I'm 1,000 miles away from North Carolina. I wasn't, according to my family, I wasn't ever allowed back in the state. I wasn't even allowed on the property. They didn't want anything to do with me. And well, they did if I was sober, if I got sober, but I was never, willing to, to get sober. So I I guess one of the first miracles is that I went to a meeting that very first day I was out of that institution. And the meeting was so packed, I had to sit on the floor, and I just cried. I didn't know what I was gonna do, or where I was gonna go, or I didn't know. I had no idea. And to be homeless sober was a new experience, right? So, and this lady, Donna, she took me in off the street, and she was, I mean, to this day, I always feel like she's the one of the best examples of Alcoholics Anonymous I've ever seen. She knew exactly what to do and what not to do. She clearly had read the chapter Working with Others, and I was on the sofa, and then I bet it wasn't even a week that her daughter, Nicole, had moved me in her bedroom. She had a little trundle bed underneath her bed that popped up, and then we had a big, giant king-size bed, and all of a sudden, I'm big sister and just part of the family. And I'll tell y'all, there is nothing much more that I've ever wanted in my life than a family, because I always felt I didn't know where I come from, who my natural parents are, and I really milked this, y'all, to that there wasn't a person on this entire planet that I knew that was of my own family, and it took years and years and years and years for me to really understand that I was playing a victim, and I was the victim, and because this stuff really did happen to me, right? I really was in an orphanage. I really didn't, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that I wasn't playing a victim. And it took a long time for me to see the truth about that. I I have to take you guys with me just to open this door to let this dog out. I don't know if y'all can hear that dog that's barking. Okay, but she's out now. I'm sorry if you could hear the background noise. But anyway, so I'm somebody that when y'all won't even believe how good AA is for me. I go uphill so fast in AA, but I also go downhill equally as fast. I will crash and burn and blow up my life like nobody's business. I mean, in a fast hurry. But in no time at all, a couple of months, I had my own little place. Well, I didn't. I rented a room, but that was my own little place, right? And then I ended up having my own little house, a little shack on the bayou in southern Louisiana, and I got what we call down here in the South my good enough degree, my GED, and because I was kicked out of school and out of high school, my car was arrested. I wasn't, but my car was arrested, and I wasn't allowed on the property. I've been arrested for trespassing on school property. I mean, the tornado is me for sure. So anyway, I ended up going to a little community college, and I graduated from that community college. And when started going to this one meeting regularly, and I met, I started to rent out when I got this house, I started to rent out one of the bedrooms because I've always been a hustler, always scheming, always trying to get over on somebody, right? I bring this into AA. So I'm thinking, well, I can rent out my bedroom, this second bedroom, and charge them for the rent of the whole house. And then so I did that. So anyway, I met this guy, Bubba. Bubba just got out of prison. Bubba needed a place to stay. And I'm like, perfect. This is a great roommate. And he worked offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. So he was gone all the time. But I got his money. And so that was that. Well, I met Bubba's brother, Troy. And 2 years later, I had my daughter, Amber. So that's the fast story about that. So Amber, she was raised in AA. She was an AA baby. And I would take her with me to school. And I was on food stamps and welfare and Medicaid, and I lived in the projects and government assisted living. And it was sometimes I would think, oh my God, I got sober for this. When I would really want to, I always did things illegal. Illegal jobs were all my jobs. I wanted to go do something illegal to make money. But anyway, so I finished that little community college, and then I went to University of North Carolina, graduated from there. I mean, can y'all believe? I mean, I come from homeless, right? And sitting here with a few degrees tonight, and nearly every job I've ever had in my entire life, I'm not even qualified for it. I'm not even qualified. But this is what AA says. AA says you can do anything you want to do. You can do anything you want to do. You just have to work for it. You got to be open-minded, willing, and honest. You got to work for it. And I'll just go to these people and say, "No, I have no experience with that. But if you'll give me a job, I swear to God, I'll give you 200%. I will give you 200%. I will show up." And people like that. People want people want a hard worker. People want to help somebody. And even to this very day, I'm in engineering, y'all. I'm not an engineer, you know, and I'm an engineer. I work for the largest industrial automation manufacturer in the world. Okay. And I am not qualified, but I learn and study and study and study. And this is 100% because of Alcoholics Anonymous. 100% does not have anything to do with me. I sold illegal things to my teachers. I didn't learn all this stuff. I do not have an exceptionally high IQ. I do not. I am a normal average person. And AA says you can go anywhere you want to go being normal and average. And that's been my experience. So I end up just having a poster child of a sobriety life. Just amazing, amazing things happen. I end up moving back to North Carolina when I was 5 years sober. And that was a real challenge for me because AA is everywhere, right? But it's different everywhere. And it took me a long time to find my tribe and find my people, right? And I ended up having to find a group that was 30 miles away and just had to just drive and do the drive. So anyway, I'm going to fast forward here. I'm kind of like a cat with 9 lives. And so I got a long story. So I'm going to fast forward to my life got so big and I slowly stopped doing some things. Oh, I should back up and tell this one part because it's really important. That first week when I'm out of that institution and that woman Donna that put me put me up in her house, every day she'd say, "Get in the car, we're going to a meeting. Get in the car, we're going to a meeting," and we would do that. Well, the first Wednesday, she said, "Get in the car, we're going to a meeting," and she takes me to the jail. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Is she setting me up? They're gonna keep me?" All this stuff going on, right? Like, I don't know about this. But I went. I went. And it was as much of a spiritual experience as any I've ever had. It was amazing. It was the first time in my life that I remember consciously that I didn't feel judged. I f I felt like I fit in. I felt equal to everybody. I didn't feel better than or less than. I felt equal, and this is not something that I have experience with. I'm always better than and usually less than, never equal, never equal. I've learned recovery requires equality, requires us to be equal for true, real real emotional sobriety for me. But anyway, I always it's kind of funny, I do say that it is interesting that I have to be in a room full of convicted felons to to feel completely comfortable and equal, but that's where I'm comfortable. So, I just like beverage alcohol, I knew I was gonna do that again. I wanted to do correction service, that was my thing, and I heard the dog whistle, right? So, I continued to go to meeting jails and prisons. Today, y'all, I forget to tell this all the time. Today, I go to prisons all around the country, all around the country. And I've been invited to 2 prisons in Canada that I haven't been to yet, but I've been a state corrections chair for my state. I was the National Corrections Conference chair. I was the National Corrections Conference Advisory Board chair. Like, my whole life blew up into correction service, right? How about this? Y'all aren't even gonna believe this. Are y'all gonna believe that they just asked me, and I talked at the international convention in Vancouver this past year. Like, how does that even happen, right? How does that even happen? And I didn't tell anybody at first, like for I bet you a month. I didn't tell anybody that I was talking at that conference because deep down inside is still, and y'all, as hard as I work, as hard as I work, as hard as I work, it doesn't, it hasn't completely gone away. It hasn't completely gone away. Deep down inside, I still don't feel worthy. I still feel less than. I still feel sometimes it's still there. It's still there. Right. And I'm like, why are they asking me to come talk at this on corrections? That's what they wanted me to talk about. Right. And I finally told my sponsor, and she said, well, honey, she said, God just picked you to be the messenger. That's all. God just picked you, and it really, it just, then that just helped. That worked for me. And I felt good about it. And I'm like, okay, I get to show up and, say what God's done for me, and I tell you this as somebody that spent their whole life agnostic. I didn't have a relationship with higher power my whole life growing up, and I was desperate to have a relationship with God, and I never did. I can remember night after night being on my knees, crying, begging, God, if there is a God, please reveal yourself to me. God, if there is a God, please reveal yourself to me over and over and over. And I just did not have this connection like y'all did. And I knew that you did. I was sure that you did. I didn't believe that you didn't. It was just that I did. And I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know how to get it. And I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you that I don't have a because that made me feel less than that I wasn't as good a good AA member because I just lied. I was dishonest. And I just I mean I didn't hear a whole lot of people showing up at those in those days just talking about I want to believe in God, but I can't. Anyway, I've since learned how to find higher power. And today, just like it says in the big book, exact thing. And I thought this would never happen for me. Just like it says, today, my relationship with God is the most important thing in my life. How about that? And I would have never, ever, ever thought that I could honestly tell you that. No way could I tell you that that would be my experience. And that's my life, right? There's no way. So anyway, so I moved back to North Carolina and my life got so big. A lot of great things happened. And I slowed back on my meetings. I slowed down on my commitment, slowed back on, it's so slow, I'm not doing anything. And y'all know what happens. I mean, because we don't have a choice, right? We don't have a choice. If what I have is a spiritual sickness, a spiritual illness, which I believe it is, and I'm not helping you and I'm not seeking God, I mean, I have no power. I have no power. And one night, just like that, it was not planned. It was not a conscious thought at all. Just like that, I picked up. And because it was there, I was around someone that was under the influence. And can y'all believe I was 20 years sober? 20 years sober. Everything that AA did for me. And I blew up my life. Oh my gosh. I blew up my life. The next day, I can't even tell y'all how much the remorse and the guilt and the shame, and I hated myself I could not believe I threw away 20 years of sobriety. My ego almost killed me. My ego almost killed me. I wanted I just and I'll tell you the biggest difference this time and then from the first time. Now my life was still completely unmanageable. I could see all that. But this time I could not put it down. I couldn't put it down. And that was something new for me. The first time I really didn't try to control it so much because I was just a crazy lunatic, you know, on the run. So, but I couldn't put it was a couple of years. It took me a couple of years to get back. And in no time, I can't keep any of these fancy jobs that I have. I go back to illegal everything you can imagine. My daughter, oh my God, y'all, my daughter, she was devastated, absolutely devastated. She'd never seen me drink. She'd never seen me live like that. She'd never seen me turn into like the flippin' mafia, you know? She'd never seen that. And oh, it was terrible. And one time I left for like 3 or 4 months. She was 16 years old. And I just left her, you know? And I mean, paid everything, right? But I'm thinking she's grown. She's 16. She's 16 years old. She's still a baby. And guess what? She got pregnant at 16. And she had my granddaughter Peyton at 17 years old. And today, of course, is the greatest. She's the greatest gift we could have ever had. But I mean, she had to forfeit her life, at 16 years old. And I wasn't there. And I was, oh my gosh, y'all. I was crazy. I was so crazy and violent, and I would assault anybody. I mean, I was that I was a lunatic. You put a mood or mind altering substance in my body, and I am a different kind of cat. And I don't care about anything. It's a switch. It's a switch. I'm a lunatic. I caught 3 felonies. I lost everything. You know, I'm going to tell you one of the worst things. Can y'all imagine after being in AA, all the gifts that y'all gave me, and I'm back to, and I didn't like to say this for so long, but I say it because I know there's got to be one person that can relate to this. I'm back to selling my body after 20 years of sobriety. That's what I'm doing. You know, I mean, this disease will take everything that means anything to you, and it'll rip it right out of your life, and you'll not have it anymore. That's just all it is to it. And and that's what it did to me. It ruined everything. I'm homicidal, suicidal. I'm just I can barely hang on. And I'll tell you what I did. I'm just about to be at my wit's end. And I remember my dear friend Wallace Bryant. Wallace was in Central Prison in North Carolina. He had a life sentence plus 40 years and was never going to get out. And he couldn't get sober in prison. He couldn't get sober. And he was going to kill himself the next day. He took a whole bunch of pills that he was able to get to give him the courage to do it. He was just going to dive down 4 stories tall, dive down head first when the bars opened the next morning. But instead, he did that. He did that alcoholic prayer, and he got on his knees and he said, "God, if you'll just get me back to AA, just please get me back to AA." And that's what I remember. I am I am completely out of my mind, and that's what I remember. And I just hit my knees and said, "God, if you'll just get me back to Alcoholics Anonymous, if you'll please just get me back." And he did. And he did. And I was given grace August 14th, 2013. And he's given me grace every day since then. And when I tell y'all, It is so much easier to stay here than to get here. Stay sober than to get sober. It is so much easier because once we take a drink, we have no, all bets are off. All bets are off. If we don't drink, now I don't want you to completely misunderstand because many of us will be stone cold sober and blow our brains out, right? We've all heard of that. Okay. So I've had to learn a little bit later in my sobriety, I've had to learn about emotional sobriety. I've had to really learn about emotional sobriety. What is that all about? And one of the first things, but let me tell you, it's impossible for me to have emotional sobriety if I'm not sober. This is why this is so important. Me, I cannot have any mood or mind altering substances. I can't smoke pot. I'm not that person. I can't, nothing. It even says in the big book, it says the only thing that we can offer is entire abstinence. That's what it says. So I believe that with my whole heart for me, because not because I'm morally anything, it's because it blocks me from God. That's the only reason. It blocks me from God. I have no connection with higher power. I have no connection with you. I have no connection with you when I'm under the influence. It's just not there. It's simply not there. There's nothing I can do to get it. So that's why it is so, so important. I have got to stay sober, right? For any chance of anything. And so when I was about 5 years sober, when I hit another bottom emotionally, an emotional bottom, and it was bad. And I had a couple of moments of if if this is what life is about, I'm not sure I want it, that kind of stuff again. And I'm like, and I'm sober. What's going on? And I'll tell you and I was in the middle of AA, the middle of AA. As a matter of fact, when it happened, the weekend happened, I was the corrections chair for the state of Louisiana and in an area assembly in the middle of business, 3 days of business meetings. And I'm in conflict. I'm in constant conflict with people, even though my motives are good. And that's what that says, 60 to 63, right? It's even when my motives are good, I'm still, I just have been unable to see that I continue to run the show. I continue to show up for the power for my life. I show up as the power for my life. I don't go to God. I go to me. Now, this is subconscious. This is below the level of consciousness. I'm not aware of this. I don't have a conscious conversation with myself deciding this is what I'm going to do. This is just what happens. This is the way I'm wired, right? This is the way I'm wired. To raise our consciousness, that's what we try to do here. Raise our consciousness. We operate from below the level of consciousness. All of our instincts, all of our fears, everything. And that's what it says in the 4-step. It says driven, right? Driven, not skipped or tiptoed, driven by fear, by, I'm paraphrasing here, but the selfishness, self-centeredness, our all of our delusions, right? All of this, all of this fear drives us. It drives me. And it lives way down in the basement, in my gut. It's, you ever heard that we've got issues in our tissues? This is the truth, right? We have issues in way, way, way down. Things that from a conditioned mind from childhood all the way. So I react and respond to things in ways that I don't even know why. Why do I act like that? Why do I respond that way? Why am I because this is the way that I'm wired. So when Dr. Silkworth, when they talk about we have to have an entire psychic change, we have to rewire like a computer, a hard drive, a mainframe. We have to rewire our whole thinking, everything. The only way we do that, this might be the only most important thing I say. In my opinion, there's one way and only one way we do that. It's not through meetings. It's not through sponsorship. It's not through service work. It's through higher power. And that's it. That's the only way. That's what I believe in my heart. It's through God. God is the only one. How do I know this? Because I don't have the power. If I could fix myself, I would. I would I would fix you too if I could, right? But I can't. That's what that step, that step 6 is about, right? Like we can't just heal ourselves. That's why we have to have God. We have to. And you know what? I was seeing this a little bit of a different way on 62 yesterday. It says that we must, talking about getting rid of selfishness. It says we must or it kills us. God makes that possible. And then listen to this. It says, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Now, I've read that 92,000 times, but this is a promise. It's saying entirely getting rid of self, that you and I have the opportunity in this moment only. That's the whole trick. It's not tomorrow, not next week. It's not when you're 10, 20, 30, 40 years sober. It's right now, only right now. You and I have the opportunity right now to entirely get rid of selfishness with God, through God, as God, you know? So I hope this doesn't sound like I'm preaching. I am really passionate about recovery. I am not trying to preach. I'm going to change that subject because I don't want to, I really don't want to come off like that. I am excited about wanting to be here, wanting to live, wanting to share what you guys have done for me. I'm really, really passionate. So I only have less than 5 minutes. So I want to tell you a couple little things. My daughter, Amber, who's 31 years old now, by the way, she got me that 23andMe and Ancestry.com because she's always wanted to know, where are we from? Do we, and maybe we'll find somebody. And so it's a long story that I don't have time to tell, but I found my mother. And oh my gosh, y'all, every, my whole life, I looked in the grocery stores. I wonder if that's my mom. That looks like me. You know what I mean? I always, always, always wanted to know. And at the same time, oh, I can't believe I forgot one of the other, and I'm just not gonna have time to tell y'all, but I'll tell this one, I gotta tell part of it for this story to even make sense. I ended up moving back to Louisiana, and I found out that Angola prison, if you've not heard of Angola, just like the country, you can look it up look on YouTube. There's hundreds of things on YouTube about Angola prison. They didn't have any meetings. And I couldn't believe it's the biggest prison in North America has no meetings. So it took me forever, but I got the meeting started and all these there's 6,000 men in Angola prison. So I got them all going all over the place. It's 23,000 square acres. It's huge, this place. And I finally, about, not really good with time, but maybe a year later, I finally told that warden, I said, I know this doesn't make sense, but we really do care about those guys on death row. We really do. And he finally, he let me go to death row. And for the longest time, we would just go cell to cell to cell. And I'd take 3 trustees with me. Trustees are people on their best behavior. I took 3 trustees with me and they would go with me and they would say, she's with us. She's with us. She's with us. And I feel like I'm with the mafia, she's with us. So, but anyway, it was the best experience of my life, right? The best experience. I wish I could have talked to the whole meeting on this. Okay. This is why they had me come to the international in Vancouver to talk about this stuff. So to my knowledge, I was able, y'all, it took me like another year or whatever. I was finally able to get 10 guys out and we circled up and we had our first meeting. How about that? And of course, they were shackled and everything, and they called their meeting, it was on death row. Of course, they called it life row. And so I found my daughter. I got to say this in 2 minutes. Lisa, I saw Lisa come on here. She'll kick me off this podium fast. So she got me the 23andMe. I found my mom. It had been about 60 days that we had talked on the phone and sent pictures and stuff. I was going to visit her for the first time. Are y'all going to believe she lived 45 minutes from me my whole life? Can you believe that? So I was going to visit her for the first time. 15 minutes before I got there, Are y'all going to believe she died? She died. I was devastated of cancer. And I found out every woman in my family's died of cancer, every one of them. God gave me 60 days to with her, to go to the doctor. And I've since had 3 life-saving cancer-related surgeries. I would have never known. I would have never known. I'm a BRCA patient, which is cancer genes. Now I found out my daughter has it. My granddaughter don't know yet. She could be 18 before she's tested. Anyway, I'm having all these surgeries. My life is a disaster. I mean, I just can't believe it. They told me I have 86% chance of survival. I'm like, this is not what you want to hear, right? Guess who helped me get through all that? Because it was in COVID. It was in the middle of COVID. We're shut down. All those guys on death row. All those guys on death row. They're emailing me on these tablets, and that's my time. Bottom line is that we get way more than we ever give. We get so much more. And that's it. I hope that somebody heard something that you can relate to. If you didn't, please come back next week and hear the next speaker. And God bless y'all, and I love y'all. Thank you.
Just a quick reminder to subscribe, like, or follow if you like the show on any of your favorite listening platforms. If you like the speakers and other content on the podcast, please show us some love by leaving a review and consider making a PayPal contribution to help keep the show going at paypal.me/A Shotglass of Recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we thank you. Our speakers come from my AA home group, AA Solution Seekers. We meet every day at 7 a.m., so pop in sometime and say hello. Until next time, thanks for joining me on A Shotglass of Recovery.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.